You know the saying, that actor disappeared in the role? Well, sometimes that actually means literally. Sure, actors have a special gift to embody whatever character they're playing through emotions and dialogue, but other times they're just buried under a mountain of prosthetics and makeup. This is especially true in comic book movies. Today we're discussing those special Marvel actors who sat in makeup chairs for hours in order to play their characters. Who had it the worst, and why is Paul Bettany being painted blue? Let's find out right now. If you think about it, I would say Paul Bettany has had the hardest transition for any actor in the MCU. He started the series as just a Jarvis voice talking to Robert Downey Jr. Probably just required a few days of work, and then a wheelbarrow of cash was dropped from Kevin Feige's hot air balloon. But then he upgraded to play Vision, and what started as a super easy role soon became the most complicated out of any Avenger. There's not only the red paint that has to be applied, but also the head prosthetics to truly make Bettany into a robot. The whole process took almost 4 hours every day, and you know what? Bettany didn't really complain. Perhaps it was the charming British side of him, but he said that he was actually quite amazed that the process didn't take even longer for how great it ended up looking. And as a final note, it's a makeup process that's always changing as the years go on. In WandaVision's black and white episodes, Bettany actually had to be painted blue and other special prosthetics had to be applied so he'd show up properly in black and white. Wild. The man, the myth, the legend, Robert Downey Jr. will probably always be the face of the MCU. Tony Stark was at the center of just about everything, and it makes sense that the first 3 phases were bookended with Tony's origin and his ultimate sacrifice. And truth be told, RDJ also had it pretty easy when it came to being in shape all these years. Yes, he had to be healthy and look good and all that, but it's not like he needed to have a Chris Hemsworth or Chris Evans body. All his big stuff was done through his CGI suit. But there still were a few big prosthetic scenes every now and then, like take Endgame for instance. I don't want to burst your bubble, but that final fight wasn't actually some desolated Avengers headquarters, but rather just a big old warehouse with green screens. RDJ's costume had him wearing a shoulder and chest plate, but everything else was CGI'd around him. I wonder how heavy those were. Overall though, a small price to pay. I mean, really it shows the magic of how far we've come with CGI versus prosthetics. Like his post-snap crispy look, I would have bet money that was glued on prosthetics, but nope, mostly all CGI. To many, I think it's safe to call Killmonger one of, if not the best MCU villain ever. He brought an equal amount of ferociousness and sympathy to the role. I only wish he kept the glasses that he wore during the museum heist on like for the entire movie. That would have been great. But unlike a lot of other villains, he wasn't some type of monster or an alien. He was just an extremely capable mercenary. So what heavy prosthetic work did Jordan have to go through? Well, whenever he took off his shirt, which was quite often. Killmonger's body was plastered with dots that represented every life that he took, and his body was riddled with them. Over 3,000 of these prosthetic beads were made and stuck all over the actor's body every day. Do you think you could put professional dot sticker on a resume? Anyways, you want to hear a fun fact? Of course you do, that's why you're here. The most difficult part of this whole process was not surprisingly the first fight scene between T'Chaka and Killmonger. Yeah, all those prosthetic beads plus splashing around in water while fighting, you do the math. I think the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise has the hardest working makeup department of any MCU movie. The amount of detail that goes into turning these actors into quirky and colorful aliens is just incredible. The one I want to highlight first is Nebula, played by Karen Gillan. First and foremost, Gillan had to shave her head. I don't see anyone else doing that. But then, to create the Nebula look, the design team took a full-size sculpted bust of Gillan's head, and they designed the heavy prosthetics around it, making sure it looked great. But also, you know, had to make sure Gillan could still act underneath it all. It was basically a 5-piece puzzle, and while that doesn't sound too hard, at the beginning it took nearly 5 hours every day. And that's not even counting the 30 or so minutes it took to take everything off at the end of the day. I mean, if I was one of these actors, I'd just keep the prosthetics on at all times, wouldn't you? Alright, imagine someone pitches to you that you get to be a big star in an MCU movie, but then tells you that it requires that you wear basically a pig's head the whole time. Would you say yes? I mean, obviously we all would, but being an actor is kind of weird when you think about it, right? Anyway, Ben Mendelsohn plays Talos in the MCU, a character who we thought was the bad guy of the movie because Skrulls were generally bad guys, and he was played by the go-to bad guy, Ben Mendelsohn. But it turns out that wasn't the case. Talos was not only a good guy, but he survived the movie, had another appearance in No Way Home, and will soon headline his own MCU Disney Plus show with Nick Fury. That's nice. But do you think there's any part of Mendelsohn who just hopes they write in a plot point where Talos changes into a human and stays that way? Because the makeup for Talos isn't easy. It's a process that, again, Mendelsohn lovingly described in an interview as wearing a pig's head. Hey, the price of fame, right? Okay, this one isn't MCU, but I mean, maybe technically it is now with the multiverse. IDK, I just want to talk about Oscar Isaac. I feel bad for him. Not just because he was in a lackluster movie with X-Men Apocalypse, but because of the heavy prosthetics he had to lug around as the main baddie. The prosthetics he wore as Apocalypse were so heavy and bulky that a lot of the time he had to be wheeled around the set in a chair because he couldn't move on his own. Ouch. The sad thing is he only took the job because he was excited to work with Fassbender and McAvoy and Lawrence and the rest of the talented cast, but didn't get a chance to interact with them much thanks to all the prosthetics. Michael Rooker had to relearn a whole new skill in order to play Yondu properly thanks to all the heavy prosthetics. We know he needed probably gallons of blue paint, but also to complete the look, he needed fake contact lenses as well as fake prosthetic teeth. I guess the Ravagers don't have a good dental plan, huh? Who knew? But these fake teeth forced Rooker to relearn how to whistle. And you might think that's not a big deal, but whistling is kind of Yondu's whole thing. It helps with his overpowered arrow. Well, after they had the prosthetic teeth in and Rooker found out whistling was difficult, they went and created gaps in the prosthetics in order to help Rooker out. I mean, if that didn't work out, I guess they could have changed it to Yondu clapping his hands in order to control the arrow, but somehow I think that's less intimidating. The process for Zoe Saldana to become Gamora took almost 5 hours every day, mainly because Gamora likes to wear vests, which leaves her arms totally exposed. I'm sure the makeup department asked on a few occasions if Gamora could wear a sweater sometimes or something. Anyways, while a lot of the character's costume is green paint, there are actually some prosthetics involved. Her forehead is actually a prosthetic piece that the design team sculpted in order to create a new shadow line for her eyebrows, and her cheeks are actually prosthetics too to help define the cheekbones. Crazy, huh? Okay, I know Josh Brolin doesn't necessarily wear a lot of prosthetics for Thanos, as we live in a completely digital age. But, like, if you see his getup to play Thanos, you would think it's his own special kind of prosthetics. The amount of CGI equipment that's rigged and covered all over Brolin's body during the shooting of Infinity War and Endgame just looks insane. I mean, they have him walk around with a big screen on top of his head in order to help people visualize how tall Thanos is going to be. But hey, would you rather have this or the early Thanos days pre-Brolin where his face was almost completely prosthetic in that original Avengers movie? Tough choice. No matter how hard Drax tries to be invisible, we can still all see the incredible work that goes into his design. Unsurprisingly, Dave Bautista spent practically the most time in the makeup chair, with the process taking close to 5 hours. To create Drax, the makeup team designed 18 different prosthetics that are attached to Bautista's body, along with all the paint, the tattoos, the dentures, and the contact lenses. Yeah, it's no wonder Bautista seems fine leaving this role behind after Volume 3, right? You know, I heard Chris Evans wore prosthetics too. Apparently he really is that pre-super soldier skinny like at the beginning of Captain America: The First Avenger, and his massive muscle transformation is just a big muscle suit and good lighting. Okay, fine, that's not true, but it helps my own self-esteem, okay?